I just even think about what they receive from their customers as sensitive information. They get floor plans of really secure facilities that show where all these devices are being installed, the security cameras, the access control points, the IT systems. Sometimes they get MAC addresses and IP addresses.
Imagine an architect, an architect that's skilled in aesthetics and building these beautiful buildings. Imagine him looking at that placeholder saying, oh man, what do we do there? Let's put a bill out there that says we will reward you if you do the right thing instead of finding if you do the wrong thing. So what we're thinking about is, could there be a tax credit involved for companies who take a proactive approach and to be able to hire a chief information security officer to be able to put in the systems that they need? We're talking small business primarily, is to be able to equip their company with the knowledge, the training, the equipment, the technology, the awareness, all of this stuff that would make their company better so that they're not putting themselves or their employees or their customers at risk. Let's get a group together to say, as advocates for advancement of cyber and getting out ahead of all this stuff and being a leader in the United States in what we're doing, is let's rewrite the laws to say, quit fining us for doing the wrong thing, but give us credit, give us, an incentive to do the right thing.
Hey everyone, I'm Rob Simopoulos and this is the Hilt. Today I'm chatting with industry legend Chuck Wilson. Chuck is the executive director and CEO of the NSCA. NSCA stands for National Systems Contractors Association. The members of his association are the companies who install physical security, audiovisual, and communication devices in buildings. I'm really excited to chat with Chuck. He wanted to share some changes that are coming that are really going to affect building construction projects that have some requirements for cybersecurity. So imagine construction projects and cybersecurity coming together. These changes could have some serious impact on how construction is navigated today. So let's get right to it. So Chuck, to start off with, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself?
Chuck Wilson here. I'm the executive director and CEO of NSCA. And NSCA is a international trade association that has about 1,000 system integrator members throughout North America primarily. And we help our member companies with their business resources, their leadership training, business development training, looking at emerging technologies all the time, codes and compliance, things of that nature, and then just trying to give them some idea of what the industry landscape is going to look like in the near term, and then in the 3 to 5 year range, so that we can have more predictable direction about where we take our companies and stuff. So we work with integrators who do voice, video, data security, life safety, surveillance, access control, all of the specialty technologies, within the low voltage realm, I guess.
So Chuck, just so for people who don't necessarily know what those technologies are, if you have a building and you want to protect it with security systems, they would be the ones installing the card readers and the cameras. And then how about the audiovisual side? What kind of projects would they do maybe in a commercial building, to give some people some examples?
Yeah, that's right. So in the audiovisual world, it's about unified communication systems, collaboration systems. So we think of all of these rooms that are being equipped with video conferencing technology and the ability to do file sharing, screen sharing, being able to work remotely, and to, what I like to call it is working with the workflows that are happening in a modern office building that would be the intersection, if you will, between the digital world and the physical office environment. So we're helping modernize the workspaces. And then at the same time, if you think about healthcare or education or government facilities, is creating what is now these mission critical, high demand rooms that are used for control and command, or looking at a variety of high graphic images. We're dealing with virtual reality and artificial intelligence and machine learning. And, the world is just exploding in terms of what types of audiovisual technologies that are taking place in the modern office environment and the smart buildings, if you will.
And I think one of the interesting things about, the type of work that these folks are doing is that, back in the day, these would be, closed loop systems where they would run a wire from one device to another device, and that would be it. But today, correct me if I'm wrong, all of these systems are basically running on the networks, or most of them are, meaning that, the integrators are going out, taking devices, programming them, and then somehow interacting with the IT systems to get them implemented and running.
Yeah, that's right. So, and it's really changed a lot, Rob. So 20 years ago, that wasn't really an issue. If it were an IP enabled device, it'd be on a standalone IP network. We just figure out how to digitize something and transport it over the cables or whatever. Today, almost everything we do is an IoT type device or an IP enabled device that is using power over Ethernet or some form of communications technology that also has power attached with it in order to energize the edge devices. So we're looking at a lot of edge intelligence devices, and we're looking at things that are really a connected technology that sits in sometimes it's a portion of the enterprise network, sometimes it's segmented, sometimes it's a standalone IT network, but a lot of times it is connected in some fashion to the enterprise network that's carrying sensitive and mission critical data for the business to operate. So we find ourselves working in that same realm, and we find ourselves dealing a lot with the IT departments now where we never used to do that before.
Right. Yeah, I think it's such a really interesting industry. And as we get a little deeper here in the conversation, we start talking about cybersecurity. I think there's a lot more aspects there as well. Just so everybody understands about what this industry looks and feels like. How big of an industry is this? You mentioned the number of members that you have, but do you have any ideas of total industry revenue or anything along those lines that you'd be able to share?
Yeah, so if you think about it from a standpoint of being part of the built environment, a part of the vertical construction, if you will, so we are the fastest growing segment of the construction industry. So when we look at the overall size of the construction industry, it is over $1 trillion, and we represent about 6% of that. So, and that's just on new construction starts. So when you think about how big our industry is, it is in the billions of dollars. And you take a look at just one segment of it, like audiovisual, that's many, many billions of dollars. And you look at security, and you look at IT, and you look at the structured cabling, you look at wireless, you look at telephony, you look at access control and security. These are huge segments of the US economy, and they're growing rapidly, of course, because everything that we do is becoming more and more in demand all the time.
Wow, amazing. I think a lot of people don't even realize that that industry exists. So when you talk to your members, what are some of the challenges that they face today, Chuck?
Well, there's a lot of them. The big things that we're dealing with is a significant shortage of talent, if you will. So one of the big initiatives we have is how to find that next generation of workforce. We look at, where's this talent coming from? We're in competition now with adjacent industries that we'd never had to compete with before. So we're this hybrid between the construction or a trade type of occupation classification and that of an IT or a highly skilled, almost like a computer science person is now becoming of interest for our industry. So we're kind of stuck in that middle between what is considered the traditional blue collar type of trade and then this super advanced, high educated IT computer type person. And then, this whole business model transformation is happening where we used to sell things on a project centric basis. Like the clients would say, how much for that system over here? It'd be $100,000, whatever. We'd sell it, we'd install it, there we'd go. Nowadays, people are so afraid of product obsolescence and what the life cycle is. And so now it's almost like we want to consume the technology, but we aren't really sure we want to own it. We might want to do it as a service or as some sort of a monthly payment or something. So we're really seeing a shift in going from that capital expenditure, if you will, to an operating expense. And we're maintaining these systems as the trusted advisor now for our clients. And a lot of times our people are embedded within their facilities to take care of these things.
Yeah, and you guys do a wonderful job helping your members, having worked with you guys for so long. I think you play such a pivotal part in helping the members evolve and move forward with their companies, which brought me to the topic here that I really wanted to talk to you about. You shared with me that there's some real changes that are occurring here on the construction side, where people who are involved in maybe systems integration project, maybe other types of construction projects, are now facing cybersecurity requirements in order to do their projects and so on. So just to start off with, is cybersecurity a topic of conversation for your members and the industry as a whole?
hmm It really is. In fact, we just did our state of the industry address gosh, what was it, 2 days ago, I guess. We had the state of the industry. And one of the questions is how aware or how concerned are you with the cybersecurity component of the systems that you install for your clients, not just internally in your own offices and stuff, but for your clients and the things that you do. And what's really starting to shape up here, Rob, is that our members are starting to understand now that having a system that they sell that they don't secure properly is just as bad as if you sold them a system that didn't work. So
Right.
it's almost like another element to client satisfaction is to know that, and we're using this mantra now that if you sell it, you have to secure it. Well, if you're sitting on that enterprise network or if you're making at all a point of vulnerability for your client, that's a big responsibility. And so the follow-up question to that is how many of you are offering cybersecurity services for your clients? And then we ask how many of you have cybersecurity insurance? And we're starting to see this definite shift towards both. I think it was about 46% of our members that were surveyed said that they carry cybersecurity insurance. The other half was essentially, we don't carry it and we don't intend to. And then the same thing with,
Wow.
they don't intend to offer it as a service. Now, if you think about that, what these companies are saying, knowing that they're immersed in this IT environment, the IP, they are on the network in some shape or form. What they're saying is that by ignoring the concern of cyber, yet being an IT enabled device installer, is you are basically self eliminating your company from doing work in healthcare facilities, education facilities, government facilities, and so on. So if you look at our primary vertical markets, the vertical markets where most of the revenue in our industry is generated, by being oblivious or having a lack of interest in acknowledging the real threats of cyber, what you're doing is you're saying to yourself, I don't choose to participate in those markets that require it, which then makes me wonder, well, what are you going to be doing? So are you going to be basically saying that I'm just going to be a very small company and a niche player that doesn't hang anything on a network and to be happy with just that? So I think this is a massive issue of concern for our members, and the ones that get it really get it, and the ones that don't get it are simply in denial that they will soon have to, or how relevant are they going to be when a client is looking for someone that can work on these kind of things.
Right. And I think their customers are starting to realize that as well, because when they're starting to do business with these enterprise organizations, their security teams are now sending them cybersecurity vendor assessments, asking them about what their cybersecurity posture looks like and their practices. And some of these members must be getting caught off guard, when these things arrive with 100 questions and they go, whoa, I don't have cyber insurance. I don't have policies. I don't train my team. That's got to catch them off guard. It'd be too bad to lose a project or a customer because you didn't have proper cybersecurity hygiene.
Yeah, and that's what they're doing is they're just saying that we're not going to be a candidate for this project because the level of sophistication requires a company that has a more advanced skill set in the IT realm than what we do. And it kind of scares me. I think about we need to heighten our level of awareness this year in what our messaging is to those companies who may not see this the way that we do.
To that point, I think avoiding it or trying to avoid it is only going to last for so long. And I think that this thing that we're going to share, you want to share in regards to the MasterFormat and the new construction changes that are happening are going to be a key part of it. Because I don't think it's necessarily going to be it's not going to be a vertical centric thing. It's going to be a construction focus. So why don't we start right there? So tell us, what is this MasterFormat and what is Construction Specifications Institute, if you don't mind, Chuck?
Yeah. So basically, the Construction Specification Institute is the organization that is the leaders in determining how does a building get built in relationship to the blueprints that are provided for the direction that the contractors have to bid off of and perform to, and then the specification manual that gives us direction of site conditions and all of the different deliverables that are in that project. And then it goes chapter by chapter, if you will, different sections, different categories that pick up every possible piece of material and the instruction on what to do with that material and the workmanship that would go into it. So it basically tells you, it's the placeholder, if you will, for everything that needs to be done on that project to deliver it in the way that the architect and engineers have designed it and the way that the end user customer wants to build out that building or to take occupancy of it. So it's a trade association, if you will, a not-for-profit organization that's been around forever. And they're the keepers of how does a construction project organize itself and how does the specification manual give direction and give contractors that have various scopes of work, give them the proper direction in how to bid it and how to perform that work.
So we're talking about like building the foundation of a building, putting up the electrical, the plumbing. It's basically that blueprint for success, taking all the way through there.
Yeah, and it just goes division by division, from openings and doors to ceilings to floor coverings to everything that leads up to our world, which is Division 27 and 28 for the most part. And then our building automation and control technologies are also part of this. In Division 25, there's a segment for integrated automation. And then electrical now is in its own division in 26. And then, of course, communications, AV, that type of thing is in 27. And then all of our security, life safety, fire access controls in Division 28.
So most of your members are working within that 27 and 28 range, those two divisions, right?
Yeah, correct. So how I got involved is with all the 20 divisions, I was the task team chairperson for all of the technology things when we had the biggest sweeping change of MasterFormat back in 2004, when Division 27 and 28, all the communication technologies, all the security technologies got pulled out from underneath Division 16, which was electrical at the time. And we were granted basically our own divisions, which really helped springboard our industry into recognition on projects and recognition by architects and engineers and builders and users as being our own trade, being our own profession, our own set of specifications that we had to abide by and to do. So we really, as an industry and as a technology group, got that identity that we were looking for back then, and it is just evolved from there.
That's great. So what's cybersecurity got to do with the MasterFormat and so forth?
I'm glad you asked. So the last revision, I think, was 2017 or 2018. And several of us got together and we said, you know what? And we started in Division 28 in the security world because we knew at that point the security industry was a little bit more advanced than the AV industry or the communication system industry in looking at security systems from the standpoint of mission critical. And we were well underway with IP-enabled security cameras and access control devices that were intelligent and remote and everything. So we thought the vulnerabilities on the security side are real and they're present, and we're working with a lot of products that have supply chain origination sources of who knows where, right? So these products come from all over the world and they get integrated and built into different forms of security systems, if you will. So several years ago, we went and we created a category, just a section in that division of 28 that said that we want to have cybersecurity requirements for that security. So we created Division 28, and then the number is .05.12. And .05.12 is the designation for cybersecurity. So what that meant was that a security system designer or architect or engineer could go and create a three-part specification which outlines, what is the general site conditions and requirements. It outlines what are the materials. And then the third part of it is how you go about implementing those materials or the system that you're putting in place. So that's the intent, is it gives you direction, tells you what to do, and tells you how to do it within a specification segment of the MasterFormat. So this year, what we did was we went back and we said the communications division is equally now at risk potentially, because we are doing the same thing by attaching all of these connected devices, be it IP video conferencing cameras, be it nurse call technology, be it communication speakers, and the whole voice over IP. Everything is a device that's attached or potentially could be attached to a network. So we said the same thing, is we have to create a Division 27.05.12 as well as 25 for the integrated automation, because in the world of building automation and control, there's the same vulnerabilities, right? You think about all that stuff with intelligent devices hanging everywhere. So what's going to be new this year, 2020, it got approved that edition of 270512, the cybersecurity requirements for communications now. And that encompasses all of your voice systems, your paging systems, if you will, the intercom systems, and then all of the video collaboration, unified communications, video conferencing, AV displays, digital signage, and all that stuff. So we've got this huge AV industry that for the first time will start seeing sections within that division of the master format that requires them to commission systems and provide materials if need be, or software as need be, that will address the issue of cybersecurity for those systems.
Is it specifying what each of these products and pieces need to have from a cyber protection perspective, or is it more focusing on deployment practices and configuration? Where are those two lines
Yeah,
put
so
inside of there?
it could be a little bit of both. So what this gives the spec writer is a placeholder. It gives them a spot to place the requirements that they're looking for, or in most cases, it's what the client is demanding. So imagine, if you will, a new hospital or medical facility being built. That end user at that hospital, they know all of the worst case scenarios with what's going on with ransomware and all this kind of stuff. So in no way, shape, or form are they going to build a hospital that doesn't have the specialty systems that have the provisioning of the best practices for cybersecurity that would be implemented in their type of facility. So when they build the building from the ground up, they will know from the very start of that this particular hospital has these requirements and best practices from the Food and Drug Administration. It could be HIPAA related. It could be a variety of requirements that they have put in place that need to be embedded within the systems that get put in place from the very onset of when the bids or proposals or selection of the contractors has taken place. So now you've got the architects and everybody looking at the placeholders that exist in master format, and they'll be thinking, oh my goodness, now what do we put in here? What do we say about cybersecurity when it relates to AV or any other systems? And that's when they get in touch with consultants in our industry or the integrators that the hospital or schools or corporate facility want to use. And they would say, what language do we put in here, and what materials do we specify, and what are the work results we expect from that? Or what codes and compliance and standards, do we list, some form of NIST standard or qualifications of the people doing the work, or do we have to have that system tested to a certain level of sophistication in respect to it? But the beauty of this, the watershed moment that we're going to embark upon here this year, Rob, is that it's in there and it's visible. And those 46% of these people that said that they had no intention of getting into cybersecurity, they're going to look at that for the first time and they're going to think, oh my goodness, I should have paid more attention back at the start of 2020 or whenever to begin my journey about creating that cyber posture, to create that, what is our response plan? And I tell you, the big thing that's driving this right now is these business associate agreements that we're having to agree with. So especially in healthcare, the BAA is a document that we have to agree to that says this is how our people are going to behave when they get on site at this facility, and this is what they're going to do with their computers, with their mobile devices. This is what they're going to do and not going to do with emails and Wi-Fi. And they have the same stringent requirements on their contractors or integrators that come on site as what they're having with their own employees. We have to do the training, we have to do the best practices, we have to have people on staff and certified and all this kind of stuff. So the reality of doing our work in the future really is now bumped up a notch. We've raised the bar to say that if we sell it, we got to secure it. If we're working on anything to do with that network, we've got to be network savvy from not just connecting the devices and getting the IP addresses and all that kind of stuff configured, but we also got to be mindful, where did this product come from? Can we track back to the originating source where that chipset came from? Is it counterfeit? Is it authenticated? What happens within all of the integrity of that system and the components of that system as it came down through the supply chain, as it came into our place, as it came and got configured by our people. And this is our new reality, Rob.
Amazing. And it's got to be putting a lot of pressure on the manufacturers as well, because I can see quickly the systems integrators turning to them and saying, if you want us to specify your products in here, you're going to have to match up in the same way too. So it's not just the systems integrators, the manufacturers must be looking at this as well.
Oh, yeah. Well, it starts even before that. Imagine an architect that's skilled in aesthetics and building these beautiful buildings. Imagine him looking at that placeholder saying, oh man, what do we do there? So they call the engineer and they say, hey, what do we put in here? And he calls the consultant, our technology consultants in our industry, and they say, hey, what do we put in here? And they will call our integrators and say, hey, what should we put in here?
Right.
We call the manufacturer and say, hey, what do we do with this spec?
Right.
And then we call you, Rob. And then
Yeah.
so it all comes back to, we got to have the right partners with the right skill sets and the right certifications and the right training, and knowing what we're doing with this in order to make sure that things are safe, right?
This is such an important thing.
It really
And,
is.
having looked in the systems integration industry and understanding the type of work that they do, there's the variety of risks associated with their practice is so important. It's not only just, as you mentioned, deploying the devices on their network. I just even think about what they receive from their customers as sensitive information. They get floor plans of government facilities or really secure facilities that show where all these devices are being installed, the security cameras, the access control points, the IT systems. Sometimes they get MAC addresses and IP addresses, and their cyber posture in storing those and utilizing those schematics and so on, and storing them, and their technicians with laptops rolling around to different sites and connecting. It's really deep when you think about it, even to that respect, and the level of protection that they need to put in place. So I think the point that here is that, avoidance is not going to be an option anymore. They're going to have to embrace this. In essence, they're going to have to become cybersecurity knowledgeable so that they can do this appropriately and meet these specifications and in the end protect their customers, which is so important.
Mm-hmm. And then, imagine, you've seen these before too, but we have our integrator members sending us their applications for their cybersecurity insurance. And these things are page after page after page of you agreeing to have these kind of things in place. And our members are like overwhelmed by it. They're like, we don't even know what these words are that they're saying.
Right.
And that's just to
Right.
get an insurance policy to make sure that you meet the minimum standard of just being protected, so that if there is a breach that you were party to somehow, and it doesn't even have to be your fault, you just have to be one of the many people that hung something on that network that, you could be drug into this. But in order to be protected from this kind of thing, is you almost have to really immerse yourself in understanding what it means both at your facility, that first party coverage, as well as the third party coverage, which is when you're out working at someone else's facility based on the technology that you're implementing, to know that you're doing everything to the best of your abilities and to treat everything at the highest level of industry standard, if you will, to make sure it's protected. And that's where we're struggling right now.
And I think it's concerning because a lot of them are just checking the boxes with yeses just to get the cyber insurance, but without really thinking that once something does actually occur and a deep dive is performed and they said yes, but the answer was really no, that they run the risk of not having that coverage and the protection that they expected.
Yeah.
Not a good situation.
I would say about every other claim that we hear about in the cyber breach environment, the claim gets denied by the insurance company because they misled them when they checked the boxes as yes on their form.
You're seeing incidents of this, Chuck?
Oh yeah, all the time. So what's going on here? And by the way, no one will admit that they're part of a cyber breach, right? So
Right, of course.
they're like cockroaches. These cyber breaches. It's, if you see one, there's probably 100 that you haven't heard about or seen. So the problem that we're having is that people, because they don't talk about what happened or how they got hacked or how they got breached or what kind of vulnerability or ransomware that someone had to pay or whatever, is because we don't want to talk about those things, is that we don't know enough about how to prevent them either. So
Right.
it's kind of a catch-22 there.
So Chuck, back to the master format for a second. When is this coming into play? So if someone is a systems integrator and they need to get things in place and start getting organized, what time frame do they have here?
Well, the resolution, we got our proposal was approved by the new master format task team, which I'm not part of anymore. That's what I used to be on. So the resolution was adopted, and then the publication of master format 2020 is scheduled for June of this year.
Okay, that's coming fast.
And that's not to say that every architect in the country will, as soon as the new 2020 comes out, that they'll start writing specs based on 2020 right away. It's kind of like a code adoption. When the NFPA code comes out, some states will take a year or so to adopt it because they have to do the training on it and have their systems, do some reprogramming and things of that nature. So we got a little bit of time here, but I think June 2020 is kind of a wake-up call for us to know that it's coming. It's not going to be not happening. So we gotta sooner or later get good at it. And when we start seeing the specs come out with this later on in the fall or maybe early next year, whenever these most large architectural firms do adopt the new master format right away, but some don't. But when the next big project comes that's using master format 2020, that'll be one of the placeholders or provisions in there. So I would have the listeners, our members that are involved in this, get on it sooner rather than later.
Yeah, it's an awareness time right now, getting the word out there. I can see, or it feels like to me, that there's probably other divisions that are going to come have to add similar practices. If you think about even just the electrical side of things, all of their stuff is all connecting into the network as well. Do you expect that you'll see that grow within the master format itself?
I didn't get involved in any of those other divisions this time around,
Right.
so I don't know, but it wouldn't surprise me. You think about building automation control, it's a no-brainer. And then you
Right.
think about security, that was a no-brainer because everything is IP enabled now. And now you think about AV systems, and man, with all the voice over IP devices and all of the, almost everything that would be a PoE connected device of some sort or Wi-Fi enabled or something like that, you've got to take this into account.
Everything's getting connected to the network. That's
I
just the
think
way it's
so.
going.
Yeah.
All right. So, Chuck, I've been lucky enough to have worked with you for years, and I know you do other wonderful things, and it takes a lot to get you to really, don't want to use the word brag or boast because, you never do that. But I want you to just share with some people about some of the other amazing things that, you and the group have been doing in regards to cybersecurity improvements. Do you mind doing that for a second for me?
No. In a good way to frame it up is to get people to go to our website. It's nsca.org and then click on our advocacy page. And advocacy is a word for just us being proactive. We consider ourselves to be the voice of the integrator. And so advocacy is just us working round the clock to make sure that we are creating the best possible business environment we can for our members. And then when you click on that advocacy page, there's a tab called Track Legislation. And under Track Legislation, a big old map of the United States will come up. And in that map, we track all of the different bills and pieces of legislation that's taking place that deals with things like codes and compliance and school safety and regulations and a bunch of things. But one of the most interesting tabs to click on is the one that says cybersecurity. And when you look at that, you can see all of the bills, both on the state level and at the federal level, of new discussions and hearings that are taking place and potential new laws and code requirements and provisions that we have to possibly adhere to right away that will prescribe, if you will, or define what type of cybersecurity things that we need to be doing as system integrators across all of the different types of work that we do. And what we're working on, myself and our friends at the Alliant Group that does our R&D tax credits for our members, what we're trying to do is to get a law passed or to get some form of legislation out there that isn't punitive in nature. In other words, a lot of these bills will fine us if we do the wrong thing. What I'm trying to do is to get a group of people together that will say, hey, as a lawmaker, let's put a bill out there that says we will reward you if you do the right thing instead of fining you if you do
Ah,
the wrong thing. So
the carrot.
so what we're thinking about is, could there be a tax credit involved for companies who take a proactive approach and to be able to hire a chief information security officer to be able to put in the systems that they need? We're talking small business primarily, is to be able to equip their company with the knowledge, the training, the equipment, the technology, the awareness, all of this stuff that would make their company better so that they're not putting themselves or their employees or their customers at risk. Let's get a group together to say, as advocates for advancement of cyber and getting out ahead of all this stuff and being a leader in the United States in what we're doing, is let's rewrite the laws to say, quit fining us for doing the wrong thing, but give us an incentive to do the right thing. So that's my latest soapbox is to get something like that going. But we started a codes and compliance committee, this year. So we're doing a lot with helping our members identify what type of code language that they have to adhere to and what kind of conflicting codes that are out there. So we have several directives from like testing agencies and different things about how things should be treated for safe practices of things, and they conflict with like an NFPA code or something. So we're helping our members now this year more than ever realize that they are the responsible party when it comes to closing out a project to make sure it's code compliant. And if any of these projects are calling for certain cybersecurity provisions and they're the responsible party, is we really have to step it up here at NSCA to make sure that our members understand what they are being held accountable for and responsible for. And the big news on that really is that we can no longer rely on any one individual manufacturer when we ourselves as integrators are connecting multiple systems together. So how can one manufacturer in a system that has maybe 10 manufacturers involved in the overall solution, how can one manufacturer be held responsible if something may have happened over here in this side of the system chain,
Right, right.
It all comes back to we are the responsible party, and that's what the code officials, the AHJs, UL, that's what everybody is telling me, is that we've got to get our members up to speed. If we are going to be these technology solution providers, we got to get our members up to speed quickly on what are the requirements and expectations of those systems. And cybersecurity is bubbled right to the top, as you know.
Well, Chuck, thank you so much for joining me on the podcast. I really appreciate you. You're doing amazing work, you and the team there at the NSCA, and I think it's really exciting to see the cybersecurity side, come together on the construction side with systems integrators and the work that they're doing. I think in the end, the industry's changing, and those changes in the end are going to protect the customers, and is really important. So, thanks again for joining me, Chuck. Really, really appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for having me, and thanks for being such a good partner with NSCA on all this, Rob. We're dependent on you, man, because it's a big deal. And you being the partner that you are, it's been wonderful. And you've helped us out here internally immensely. So we take advantage of the services ourselves, and we have taken our cyber posture from something we weren't very proud of when we started, and now we are in what I feel much better shape now internally as well. So thank you for helping us with all that.
Oh, you're welcome, Chuck. Thanks so much.